Just after daybreak, a light rain had passed over the ranch in California. Water droplets still clung to the oak branches, while the dirt roads leading into the forest had turned muddy after a long night of rain. It was the perfect time to inspect our monitoring sites, as the damp ground preserved tracks far more clearly than usual. I have always enjoyed mornings like this, because simply studying the ground can reveal everything that happened in the forest throughout the night. Our first survey site was located in an open clearing within the forest. As soon as we arrived, it was obvious that the area had been extremely active. The ground had been rooted into large patches. Countless hoof prints were deeply pressed into the soft mud, and freshly formed game trails stood out more clearly than ever. It was easy to picture a sounder of feral hogs moving through the area during the hours of steady rain. What caught my attention was not only the number of tracks, but also the extent of the disturbance. A rainy night that seemed so peaceful had actually concealed a remarkably active world of wildlife. As the rain gradually stopped, we continued to the second monitoring site. Although the sun had begun to break through the clouds, the ground remained soaked, with fresh muddy trails stretching across the area. The information we collected here exceeded everyone's expectations. It was clear that this was one of the most frequently used travel corridors around the range. Morgan spent considerable time measuring the distance to nearby water sources, grazing fields, and the forest edge to update the survey map. It reminded me that even small changes in terrain or food availability can quickly turn an area into a major gathering point for wildlife. Leaving the clearing behind, we ventured deeper into the oak forest. The surroundings became much quieter, with only the sound of water dripping from the trees after the rain. The site revealed tracks of many different sizes, from very small to remarkably large, indicating the presence of an entire group made up of animals of different ages. That observation made me pause for a moment. Finding both adult and juvenile tracks in the same area suggested that this was no longer an occasional feeding stop, but part of the regular range of a well-established population. That is extremely valuable information when monitoring wildlife activity and evaluating its impact on the range. By early afternoon, we inspected another location near the forest edge. Large hoof prints standing out in the damp soil immediately drew my attention. Morgan believed they most likely belonged to the same exceptionally large hog that had appeared in previous surveys. Finding its tracks once again confirmed that this travel route was still being used. I felt both excited to gather more data and concerned when I looked toward the nearby fields and grazing areas. Places like these are often where conflicts between agricultural operations and wildlife become most apparent. The fifth survey site was located right along the edge of the ranch. Although the area itself was relatively small, the remaining tracks showed that a remarkably large individual had passed through only a few hours earlier. Standing among the fresh hoof prints, I realized how different it feels to examine the evidence firsthand compared to simply watching footage from camera. The depth of each print, the freshly disturbed soil, and the flattened patches of grass all helped us better understand the scale of the activity that had taken place during the night. By the time we returned to the ranch, the California sky had turned a deep purple as the sun disappeared below the horizon. Before ending the day, we stopped at one final monitoring site near the equipment barn. The latest data gave everyone pause. Activity recorded there was significantly higher than in previous days, indicating that the animals were appearing much closer to areas used by people. Rather than encouraging us, the findings raised new concerns. If this trend continues, the risk of damage to pastures, livestock feed, and agricultural operations will become increasingly significant. As the long day came to an end, what stayed with me was not any single survey site, but the broader picture of how the entire landscape was changing. The rain had made the tracks easier to read, while also revealing that feral hog activity around the ranch was increasing. Every survey adds another piece to the puzzle, reminding us that effective wildlife management depends on continuous observation, careful analysis, and maintaining a balance between protecting farmers' livelihoods and respecting the natural ecosystem. Recently, the fields have no longer been as peaceful as before. By day, everything still looks green and thriving, but after just one night, the soil is torn apart, plants bitten through, an entire corner of the garden turned into a battlefield. Overlapping footprints of all sizes, this isn't one animal, but a whole herd. There was no other choice. We had to act, not to hunt, but to protect the crops, to protect livelihoods. The traps were set the evening before. Bait was placed along their familiar paths. Everything was carefully prepared, and what happened overnight meant that at first light today, our priority was to check the traps. The first cage appeared at the edge of the field. Inside was a small group. We quickly noticed something. Their fur wasn't the same, black, brown, even striped. This wasn't random. It showed that multiple groups had merged, a sign the herd was growing, expanding its range. Yet a few more weeks, and this place would become their permanent feeding ground. Inside the cage, they pressed together, breathing heavily, unable to escape. We moved to another trap. Some of the boars inside reacted violently. They slammed their heads into the steel frame again and again. Others behaved differently, slipping to the side, using their snouts to probe each bar, searching for the smallest gap to break free. This is something many people overlook. Not every animal reacts the same way. The steel bars rattled, echoing sharp metallic clangs. This was no longer feeding behavior. This was survival instinct. In another corner, a smaller trap had also been triggered. Inside was a single adult and a few juveniles. The confined space prevented them from gaining momentum or coordinating like they could in the open. This is the key point. You don't need a large trap. Just the right placement is enough to hold even the strongest animal. The result from last night made one thing clear. The traps worked, not by chance, but through careful calculation. placing traps along movement paths, dividing positions, baiting according to the herd's habits. But we couldn't stop yet. The traps remained. The bait was replenished. Tonight will be the next test. Slam. The trap door dropped shut. Both were caught, thrashing inside. A good sign. The herd was beginning to lose its caution at the first point. Not long after, at another trap set nearby, a different adult appeared, larger, more cautious. It circled, paused, stepped back, then moved forward along the bait trail. The moment it stepped inside, slam, the second trap snapped shut. Chaos erupted inside, with its size and behavior. We assessed it as a dangerous individual, likely a dominant, experienced animal that had been causing repeated damage in the area. The final outcome of the night came at another trap point. Two were already caught inside. They continued to panic, slamming repeatedly against the steel frame. But outside, a few others had already sensed something was wrong. They didn't move in, just a split second of hesitation. Then they turned and bolted, disappearing into the deep forest. The sound faded into the distance, leaving behind a trap still trembling. And this is something we have to accept. No trapping system is 100% effective. The goal is to break the herd, to reduce the destruction they bring to the crops. The next morning, we returned together to check the traps. At one cage, several were still held inside. One kept jumping, throwing its full weight upward. Clang! It tried to smash against the top of the cage, but it was useless. Trying to escape, but couldn't. The next steps were carried out quickly and efficiently. We secured the cages, transported all the boars out of the farming area, ensuring they would not return to destroy another night. Everything was done according to proper procedures and legal regulations. The final stage, we proceeded with humane handling in full compliance with legal guidelines. No prolonging, no display. This had to be done. This is not hunting. This is how farmers protect their crops, protect the work of their own hands. What do you think about this approach? As wild boar damage becomes more severe, what other choices do farmers really have? Early in the morning, we arrived at Olivia's farm after receiving her call for assistance. For several consecutive weeks, she had noticed patches of pasture being rooted up, damage to the irrigation system, and feral hog tracks appearing increasingly close to the living area. What concerned Olivia most was that the hogs seemed to have changed their travel routes and were showing up more frequently than before. The first site we inspected was an area Olivia had set up herself to monitor hog activity. She explained that she had spent considerable time studying the terrain and choosing the location based on the freshest tracks. However, the results showed that activity there was lower than expected. Olivia smiled, though she could not hide her disappointment. She said it was her first time setting up a monitoring site on her own and viewed it as a valuable lesson. Moving a location by just a few dozen meters can make a tremendous difference. Based on our initial observations, the group decided to survey another area near a route frequently used by the hogs. Upon arriving, we found much fresher signs, heavily rooted ground, numerous overlapping trails, and tracks of varying sizes. I could clearly sense the excitement among the team, not because of an immediate result, but because we had finally identified one of the key travel corridors around the farm. Olivia also admitted that analyzing field sign provided far more information than she had expected. Meanwhile, Jack wanted to test one of his hypotheses. He chose to inspect a site deep in the woods, hoping to document the activity of the larger individuals that had often appeared on camera. The outcome, however, was not what he had anticipated. The tracks indicated that very few animals had passed through the area recently. Jack was somewhat disappointed, but he quickly concluded that adjusting plans according to real-world data is always more important than clinging to initial assumptions. In the afternoon, we returned to a survey point established earlier that morning. The scene had changed noticeably within just a few hours. Numerous fresh tracks had appeared, the soft soil had been disturbed over a wide area, and the trails had become more distinct. Olivia stood observing for quite some time before remarking that checking a site only once a day would mean missing a great deal of valuable information. I completely agreed. Comparing conditions at different times is precisely what allows us to understand the activity patterns of the hogs. The next survey site yielded even more interesting data. Located near a water source and pasture, it had the highest concentration of signs we had seen all day. I was both surprised and concerned to find that the area was being used more heavily than expected. This suggested that the hogs were taking advantage of reliable sources of food and water to expand their range. Olivia took careful notes, knowing that this information would help her prioritize fence reinforcement and closer monitoring in the future. By the time darkness had fully fallen, we checked the final site before ending the day's work. After compiling data from all the locations, the team realized that no single solution fits every landscape. The key to effective management lies in understanding the hog's behavior, the characteristics of the environment, and continually updating field data. On the drive back, Olivia shared that the most valuable thing she had gained from the day was not an immediate result, but rather the ability to read the landscape, interpret signs, and objectively evaluate each area. To me, that was also the greatest value of the survey, gaining a deeper understanding of nature in order to make sound management decisions and help reduce conflicts between agriculture and wildlife in a well-informed way. As a field coordinator with the Arizona Wild Boar Rapid Response Team, I have faced countless critical situations, but the chain of events that unfolded recently on the suburban edge still stays with me. Heavy steel structures shook violently. The ground trembled beneath the force of tons of muscle. It all began when cornfields were flattened, driving wild boars out of the fields and into residential areas. 8 a.m., an emergency video was sent to the control center. In the middle of a busy street, an aggressive wild boar suddenly charged out and attacked a pedestrian head-on. It was violent, terrifying, and unbelievably fast. After the dangerous animal was brought under control, our immediate assessment was clear. Food sources in the nearby dry hills had likely been exhausted, forcing the boars down into the neighborhood in search of food. The situation was critical. I ordered all trail access points sealed and launched a full-scale control operation on the hillside above the town. Before any trap could be placed, the technical team spent hours tracking signs. Fresh hoof prints in soft mud, tree bark torn apart, deep-rooting marks along the forest edge. Everything pointed to the presence of a large sounder. Once the movement route was confirmed, I authorized deployment of a hexagonal drop trap built with a reinforced steel frame. Size: 6.6 feet, 9.8 feet, built as a reconnaissance setup to test reactions and estimate the density of the lead group. 11:24 p.m., the camera captured 2 boars, each around 88 pounds, entering the center zone. I immediately triggered the trap. The gate dropped. Both targets were secured cleanly. But through the infrared screen, I could still see larger shadows lingering outside the perimeter. They were too cautious to enter such a tight enclosure. We had moved too quickly. I changed tactics. This time, a box trap made from high-strength aluminum alloy. Size: for 0.9 feet, 8.2 feet, fully enclosed, designed to deceive visual suspicion. The target now was not the whole group, but oversized solitary boars with aggressive behavior. Those were the individuals posing the most immediate threat to nearby residents. Around 2 a.m., a giant boar appeared. Estimated weight: nearly 660 pounds. It stepped inside cautiously, then began devouring the fermented corn bait. The trap was triggered. The beast was locked inside. It slammed wildly against the aluminum walls, creating violent metallic crashes. The final solution was deployed: the circular elevated trap, diameter 32.8-foot frame, heavy tubular steel covered with ultra-durable mesh. The entire system was suspended 3.9 feet above the ground by electric winch cables. Its open design made the boars drop their guard. We spread fermented grain in a wide circle beneath the center of the trap. At the transition zone between the hills and town, the giant black trap finally showed movement. Around 10 boars entered in a crowded rush. They shoved, competed, and fed greedily, completely unaware that the trap was already waiting above them. Once the entire group was inside, I pressed the remote trigger. The steel frame dropped free. The system locked instantly. The whole sounder was contained inside the circular barrier. Everything seemed calm until the next morning. Around 8 a.m., one of my teammates called in urgently and told me to check the camera feed immediately. I could hardly believe what I saw. A dense group of wild boars had entered the smaller trap. This version was smaller than the black trap from the night before, but the results were astonishing. I triggered it immediately. No chance to escape. The boars ran in panic, circling desperately, searching for a gap. But the steel structure had sealed every exit. The direct threat to the residential area was officially removed. We loaded into the Land Rover Defender and headed straight to the site. A pickup truck was backed carefully against the trap gate. Using a long guiding pole, we directed each animal into the transport vehicle one by one in an orderly way, minimizing panic as much as possible. In cases where an individual was excessively aggressive and posed immediate danger to the team, humane on-site action was taken to ensure total safety. Watching each animal brought under control and loaded out, a deep sense of relief spread across the team.
Yep.
Controlling wild boars is a test of patience and strategy. From reading signs in the dirt to adapting trap systems in real time, every move must be calculated. Only by understanding their behavior and how they react can we intervene effectively and restore peace to the community. The battle against the invasive wild hogs in Texas is not fought only out on the open fields with rifles. It truly begins inside the farmer's workshop. As the wild hogs grow increasingly cunning and their population multiplies at an alarming rate, small homemade traps are no longer enough to stop them. To fully protect the fruits of his labor, Nick realizes he needs a larger, more professional campaign. That is why he decides to upgrade his entire arsenal, from high-tech smart traps to specialized transport equipment, turning a spontaneous hunting effort into a well-organized, efficient, and systematic operation. Realizing that his old homemade cage traps could no longer handle the growing problem, Nick makes a major investment. He orders a massive next-generation smart cage trap equipped with a remote-controlled automatic triggering system, which is delivered directly to his... However, even the biggest trap is useless without a suitable way to transport capture hogs. Nick begins an ambitious mechanical project, building a specialized wild hog transport trailer from an old trailer frame. For days, the sound of welding echoes through his workshop as sparks fly, while he carefully reinforces the steel frame and welds heavy-duty metal bars into place. The work demands tremendous patience, from welding load-bearing joints to designing a convenient drop gate that allows the hogs to enter the trailer but prevents them from breaking back out. After the final coats of rust-resistant paint are applied, the massive transport trailer is finally complete and ready to roll into the field. Fully equipped with his upgraded gear, Nick begins deploying traps across the hardest-hit areas. Every trap inspection now becomes a moment of anticipation. The first trap, positioned along the forest edge, successfully triggers and captures the first group of destructive intruders. Moving on to the neighboring valley, the second trap delivers another major success by blocking the path of another sounder of wild hogs. As expected, the third trap, placed in a dense grassland area, is also packed with captured hogs, proving just how effective Nick's upgraded trapping system has become. However, no matter how effective cage traps are, there are always a few old, experienced boars that refuse to enter them. To finish the campaign once and for all, Nick shoulders his rifle and teams up with his seasoned hunting dogs to track down the remaining animals. Under the scorching Texas sun, the dogs bark relentlessly as they corner their target. With a single precise shot, Nick brings down the last massive wild hog, completely eliminating the threat to his cornfields. The campaign ends not only with peace restored to the ranch, but also with a well-earned reward on the dinner table. Nick transports all the harvested wild hogs back to the processing area. With a sharp knife and practiced skill, he carefully butchers the animals, separating the finest, leanest cuts of meat, ready to be transformed into delicious meals for family and friends. Taking a refreshing sip of cold beer beside the smoky charcoal grill, Nick gazes across the cornfields that are finally safe once again. The greatest lesson from this campaign is that in the battle against nature, a farmer needs more than strength. Success requires investment, practical engineering, scientific thinking, and self-reliance. Turning a destructive pest into a valuable source of nutritious food is how Texas farmers adapt, survive, and assert their stewardship over the land they call home. What would you do when facing over 200 pounds of muscle charging wildly through the darkness? For us, that's just another day on the job in Mississippi. With the support of infrared cameras and specialized net traps, we move in to eliminate the threat before crops are destroyed. Hop in and follow us in the hotspot right now. We are specialists in a rapid response wild hog control team in the Mississippi Delta. In this region, wild hogs are an ecological disaster. They tear up levees, destroy crops, and carry disease. Every day, my job starts with reading the signs. Freshly churned mud, deep hoof prints in damp soil, or scattered corn trails. That's how we map their movement. Our goal isn't blind eradication. It's safe wild boar trapping, minimizing the risk of accidents for both people and livestock. Two 20-foot pig brig net trap systems are already in place. The moment the hogs sense human presence, panic erupts inside the trap. They slam violently into the net walls, trampling over each other in a desperate attempt to escape. Dust explodes into the air, mixing with sharp, piercing squeals. But the net flexes, absorbing every impact and keeping them contained. To achieve this, we had been calculating and preparing for days. This system demands absolute patience. On Thursday night, we set the trap in conditioning mode. The net was suspended high on 6-foot steel T-posts, with dozens of pounds of corn spread evenly below. The hogs fed freely without feeling threatened. A few days later, we switched to capture mode. The net was lowered. Everything was ready, but wild hogs are not easy to fool. Camera data came in just after 1 a.m. Tension built in my chest as I watched the herd circle the trap on my phone screen. They were smarter than expected. The entire group stayed outside, using their snouts to eat the bait around the edges. Not a single one stepped fully under the hanging net. That was the real test. If we lost patience and intervened, we'd lose everything. Nearly an hour later, the lead sow finally gave in to hunger. She lifted the edge of the net with her snout and slipped inside. The rest followed immediately. Success. The next morning, as we approached, the entire group was in chaos. Mud splattered across the net, hooves sliding violently across the soaked ground until we began restraining them one by one. Around 11 p.m., the camera showed a large boar slowly approaching a circular cage trap with a netted entrance. It was extremely cautious, feeding only at the edge, its body not fully inside. Finally, it stepped fully inside. The 200-pound mass stood still for a moment, confused, chewing corn as if it hadn't yet realized it was trapped. That night, we headed out again to another trap site near a livestock farm. We arrived on site. A teammate pointed quietly to a torn section of a net. Earlier, a hog had escaped through that exact spot. We had patched it, but the backup clips weren't strong enough. Wild hogs have excellent memory. If this one found that weak point again, it could escape. We weren't taking that risk. A single, decisive shot rang out. The threat was neutralized instantly. The next morning, we returned to clear the site. The hogs inside were still aggressive. Our muscles tensed as we tightened our grip on specialized catch poles. The loop snare tightened just enough to control each animal's resistance. Working in sync, we secured them one by one and loaded them efficiently onto the pickup truck. By early afternoon, the pickup stopped at the final trap site. The most destructive individuals in the area were here. Inside, they charged and slammed into the net in desperation. We continued processing them one by one. The job ended as the sun began to dip. Exhaustion set in, but the control operation was complete.
Go. Go, yeah. Hip, hip, get turned. Hip. Hip, hip.
For many people, Texas is the land of freedom, endless cornfields, and sun-drenched highways. But for farmers like Nick, it is also a battlefield without gunfire. Every harvest is earned not only through sweat, but through an exhausting battle against invasive wild hogs. Like ghosts of the night, they arrive with razor-sharp tusks, tearing apart months of hard work and threatening the peace of the entire farm. Protecting the land, livestock, and crops is no longer just a job. It is an instinct for survival, an endless struggle between people and the untamed forces of nature. The fight against invasive wild hogs in Texas is never easy. Every new campaign begins with the most important step, preparing the bait. Nick carefully mixes a special attractant, a blend of whole corn fermented with sweet syrup and artificial scent, an irresistible combination capable of making even the wariest wild hog lower its guard. His patience is quickly rewarded. Returning the following morning, Nick hears loud squeals echoing in the distance before he even reaches the trap. An incredible sight awaits him. A large group of wild hogs have been successfully captured, crammed together inside the steel enclosure. As Nick approaches, the hogs become frantic, crashing violently against the wire panels. After dispatching them safely with a specialized firearm, he quickly loads the animals into the bed of his pickup truck. Encouraged by the successful start, Nick heads toward another trap positioned deep along the western forest edge. The hogs inside this trap are just as aggressive, slamming against the cage the moment they notice him. It turns into another highly productive morning as every captured hog is safely harvested and transported away. But trapping wild hogs is a game that humans do not always win. On the second day, luck seems to abandon Nick. As he walks toward one of his smart traps in an open pasture, he immediately notices that it has been triggered. The gate has dropped, but the cage is completely empty. After taking a closer look, he discovers a critical mechanical failure. The trigger latch became jammed halfway, leaving just enough of an opening for the panicked, intelligent hogs to squeeze through and escape. Swallowing his frustration, Nick carefully repairs the mechanism before resetting the trap, hoping to recover from the costly mistake. The disappointment does not end there. The next large corral trap, expected to capture an entire sounder, contains only a single hog. Considering the large amount of bait he had spread, the result is frustrating. Even so, Nick calmly follows a standard procedure. He assembles a portable transfer tunnel connecting the trap directly to the livestock trailer. The hog cautiously walks through the steel passageway, and the transfer is completed successfully. The third day brings situations far beyond anything Nick could have anticipated. Watching the live camera feed during the night, he anxiously follows the screen on his phone. A large sounder of wild hogs slowly moves into the central trap. The bait has worked perfectly, but at the exact moment the gate drops, another system failure occurs. The trap cannot withstand the pressure. The panicked hogs repeatedly slam into its weakest point, breaking free one after another and escaping within seconds while Nick can do nothing but watch in frustration. Before he has time to recover, Nick receives another trap alert from a nearby woodland. He immediately jumps into his truck and races toward the location, expecting another confrontation with aggressive wild hogs. But when his flashlight sweeps across the steel enclosure, he can only freeze for a moment before laughing in disbelief. Instead of wild hogs, the trap contains an entire family of wild deer staring back at him in confusion. With no hesitation, Nick quietly opens the gate and releases the unexpected visitors back into the forest. The patrol seems destined to end in complete disappointment until he returns to the very trap he repaired the previous day. Inside the cage, there's only a single captured hog. But Nick's disappointment instantly turns into complete astonishment. This is no ordinary wild hog. Its enormous size is almost breathtaking. With a massive shoulder shield, thick mane, razor-sharp tusks, and an incredibly muscular body, it is clearly a dominant old boar, the ruler of this stretch of wilderness. Capturing this giant is worth far more than catching 10 younger hogs. Removing such an experienced breeding boar means eliminating one of the greatest threats to the farm. As darkness settles over Texas, Nick securely locks the trailer and brings 3 unforgettable days of highs and lows to an end. The battle to protect his farm is far from over, but with determination, experience, and resilience, Nick is ready for whatever challenges come next. In recent days, farm areas across Texas have continued to show fresh signs of wild hog activity. The ground has been torn apart, fences pushed out of place, and the familiar trails are expanding deeper into the farmland. Clearly, the wild hogs have returned, and if they are not controlled quickly, they could turn this entire ranch into barren land within only a few nights. How can we possibly control the entire population in a single large-scale operation? Through the night surveillance cameras, an entire group of wild hogs appeared boldly on the grassy edge of the forest, digging through the ground and leaving behind unmistakable signs. I did not need long to decide exactly where the trap needed to be placed. The very next day, we returned to that exact location. The trap was set up quickly, positioned directly where the hogs had appeared the night before. This time, we did not hesitate to spread a large amount of bait right in the center of the trap, enough to keep the entire sounder inside as they returned. Everything was finished before dark. Night fell, and just as the cameras had shown before, the wild hogs came back. The next morning, when we arrived at the site, the trap had captured the entire group. Inside, they crowded together and moved chaotically after spending the night trapped, confirming that this time we had placed the trap with absolute precision. The next trap was placed in an open clearing inside the ranch, completed only minutes before darkness fully covered the area. It was a fairly exposed position, but it sat directly along the hog's movement route, so we decided to take the chance. The following morning, when we returned to inspect it, everyone almost froze in disbelief. Inside the trap was not an entire group as expected, but only a single animal. But it was the dominant boar, massive in size and unbelievably aggressive. Its strength alone was enough to shake the entire trap every time it moved within the confined space. The moment was tense, but also thrilling because this was the most important target of all. Maintaining maximum caution, we slowly brought the situation under control and carefully secured the massive boar onto the truck, ending an unexpected but highly valuable capture. The next trap was set during daylight while the area remained quiet and relatively undisturbed. Everything was completed quickly and discreetly, enough to avoid making the hogs suspicious. But the surprising part was that we did not have to wait until morning. The moment darkness fell, the activation signal came through. The trap had been triggered. Without wasting time, we immediately moved toward the trap during the night. From a distance, chaotic noises echoed through the silent landscape, signaling that several hogs were already trapped inside. As we approached the area, everything became clear, and without wasting a single second, We quickly secured the situation and began collecting the results from this successful trap. The next trap was placed deep inside the forest, in the area where the wild hogs usually retreated at dawn after tearing through the ranch during the night. It was a less disturbed location, making the animals far less cautious when returning to their familiar shelter. The trap remained there overnight. And the following morning, when we returned to inspect it, we were almost stunned by what we saw inside. The number of hogs trapped this time was far greater than before, packed tightly together and constantly moving after many hours inside the enclosure. Clearly, this time we had placed a trap directly at the center of the entire Sounders gathering point. Not every group of wild hogs we capture is handled the same way. In areas with suitable terrain, locations far enough from ranches and isolated enough to prevent the animals from returning, we choose to relocate and release them back into the wild. This approach reduces pressure on the farming areas while also minimizing the chance of the hogs returning to cause more destruction. However, choosing the correct release location is critical. It must be far enough and isolated enough. Otherwise, all the previous effort could become meaningless within only a few nights. That is also part of how we balance protecting the ranch while controlling the wild hog population responsibly. When the final traps had been checked, the ranch slowly returned to a quieter state after many tense days. Not every wild hog had been captured, and not all of them were handled in the same way. But the most important goal had been achieved, controlling the immediate threat facing the ranch. Even so, the marks left behind in the dirt served as a clear reminder of one thing. This battle is far from over. Out there, deep within the forests, other groups of wild hogs are still moving, watching, and waiting for the moment to return. And when that happens, we will be ready to return as well. As the sun rises over the Texas countryside, I arrive at Nick's ranch. For weeks, he has been documenting growing signs that feral hogs are moving closer to the areas where his family lives and works. Rooted up fields, damaged fences, and newly formed game trails have convinced both of us to spend the entire day inspecting the monitoring sites that have been prepared in advance. Our first stop is the backyard behind the house. Nick has repeatedly found fresh tracks here and scattered bait the day before to help monitor the level of feral hog activity. When we arrive, the ground is still covered with numerous fresh footprints. It is clear that this remains one of their regular travel routes. I feel relieved that our earlier assumptions were correct, but at the same time, I cannot ignore the concern that the hogs have moved closer to the family's living area than ever before. Leaving the ranch, we head deeper into the forest where Nick says he has often seen groups of feral hogs moving at sunrise and sunset. The air beneath the trees is cool, but the ground has been torn up across a wide area. Layers of overlapping tracks reveal that a large group passed through during the night. Standing there, I understand why Nick often says that even a few days without monitoring can lead to significant damage to pastures and crops. The third survey site is only about 300 meters from the ranch. Such a short distance shows how blurred the boundary has become between farmland and the surrounding natural habitat. As I examine the area, it becomes clear that the feral hogs have been using the same travel corridor repeatedly over many days. This information is especially valuable because it helps Nick identify which sections of fencing need reinforcement and where future monitoring efforts should be concentrated. By early afternoon, we continue to another location near the edge of the forest. The signs here indicate that activity began quite early in the day. I spend considerable time recording the locations of game trails, travel directions, and the distance to the nearest water source. As we combine observations from multiple sites, the overall picture of the hogs' range becomes much clearer. That is exactly what makes today's survey far more valuable than simply examining each location on its own. The fifth site keeps my attention for quite a while. Tracks of many different sizes appear along the same trail, ranging from large adults to young piglets. This tells us that these are not solitary animals searching for food, but an entire sounder living and traveling together. Looking at the long stretches of rooted up ground, I understand why local landowners become increasingly concerned as feral hog populations grow. In a relatively short period, they could dramatically alter the condition of pastures and cultivated land. As the sun gradually disappears behind the oak trees, we return to the final monitoring site, located back on the ranch. Even after a long day in the field, we decide to complete one last inspection to finish collecting the day's data. The results show that feral hog activity near the residential area remains significant. Nick lets out a deep sigh and says that what he hopes for most is not to find more fresh tracks, but to see these travel routes become quieter over time. I completely understand how he feels. For a ranch manager, success is measured not by a single survey, but by whether long-term efforts to protect the land and crops continue to make a real difference. As the day comes to an end, we organize all of our notes, field photographs, and map travel routes. Every survey site adds another piece to the puzzle, helping us better understand how feral hogs use the landscape around the ranch. That knowledge provides an essential foundation for making informed management decisions aimed at reducing conflicts between agriculture and wildlife, while helping preserve the balance of the local ecosystem.